Welcome to the Ghost Story Guys mini show for October 20th, 2020. I'm Brennan Storr.
I'm Ian Gibbs.
And this is the show where we answer your emails, texts, and calls to find out what's going on with you. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing pretty good, Brennan. How are you?
I'm good. I'm hoping we can get this done before we lose power.
It's pretty insane out today. Did you hear the lightning and thunder at like 6:30 in the morning? Of course not. You weren't even aware there is a 6:30 in the morning.
You just asked the silliest question anyone's ever asked.
I was just sitting there sipping my coffee, minding my own business in the semi-darkness of my home, and boom, lightning, and then maybe a count of 5 and a humongous rolling burst of thunder that just seemed to go on and on. Sadly, that was it. That was the full thunderstorm, but I was grateful for what I got.
Just one big explosion and then everything's quiet. Yeah. That sounds uncomfortably accurate. But
I just miss thunderstorms around here. I grew up with thunderstorms on the prairies, so
me too, man. The one time we had a really great thunderstorm here, was that when all that particulate drifted over from the big forest fires in China.
Yeah.
And we had that massive light show.
Yeah,
and I was up in Telegraph Cove with Nikki.
Oh no, you missed it.
I couldn't have been further away unless I was swimming. And I missed the whole fucking thing.
We don't get thunderstorms because we are so close to the ocean. It just keeps everything kind of nice and balanced. We don't get the extremes.
Is that what it is? I always wondered.
Yeah, we don't get the hot or the cold. It keeps us sort of in the middle, so we just don't get them. They just don't happen for us.
Oh, such a bummer. I remember this one great storm in Revelstoke where I was sitting in my house. I was laying on my bed. And just this massive crack of thunder, and all the power went out.
Right.
Even then, I mean, I wasn't into the paranormal. I was just a coward. So I leapt off my bed in the fashion.
Hold your pants up.
Well, it's.
Cast aside the hand lotion and ran.
Hand lotion? I'm not rich. Come on.
The big tub of Crisco.
There we go.
There you go.
But I leapt from my bed in the style I could only manage at that point in my life.
Yeah, right.
Ran down the stairs, and not only was my power out, everything was out. So the street lights, it was late, it was pitch black. I've never seen outside look so dark.
Okay, I got one for you.
Fire away.
I was in Toronto going to school, and we lived in the top of an old mansion, so it was about 4 stories off the ground.
Jesus Christ, of course you did.
Of course I did. And there was a wicked storm. It was, again, Toronto, so extreme heat, extreme humidity. Huge storm, like, oh my gosh, I had never seen a thunderstorm like it. And me and my buddy are up in the top floor yelling out the window at people going, "This is God's wrath, run sinner." And like, we're just being idiots. And then lightning literally hit the power pole in front of the house. The blinding light, not the bang, the blinding light threw me backwards off the couch we were yelling over. And then boom! And of course, all the power went out, and the burglar alarm went off, and the fire alarm went off. And I can comfortably say I've never been that scared in my life.
Not for the first time. God was done with your shit.
Right? And me and my buddy looked at each other and we're like, well, we deserve that. There was no, what just happened? It was like, oh yeah, God smote us.
Yeah, that is, well, you were smoten.
I was smoted.
Smoted. This explains so much about you. I get
Doesn't it?
Yep. Literally directly taunting God.
Well, it gets boring.
That's right. I don't want to pick up a hobby, so I just shake my fist at God.
That's right. And yell at his little tiny creatures.
Well, we're not going to challenge God this time around.
No, let's just stick to the mailbag because, Lordy, it's full.
So, of course, now it's time for listener mail.
Our courteous and efficient staff is on call 24 hours a day to serve all your supernatural elimination needs.
We're ready to believe you.
Brandy sent us a message via Facebook and asked, okay, so I have a really important question for you. I've tried to Google it and can't find anything. When dreaming, people say they are coming. Who are they? I have vivid dreams and started waking up screaming in my sleep after we moved into this house, and that term left me scared and confused.
I kind of think it's sort of a bit of a catch-all because I've had nightmares where everything is fine, and then something changes and you feel something bad about to happen. And I've had that thought where they're coming. But I still don't know. Yeah, I'm no closer to knowing who they are. And I kind of just wonder if it's like a general term, you know?
Well, I think it's just like what a really good horror movie does is they almost never show you the monster. Because
right.
The real fear isn't from said monster. It's from what is the monster? What can it do? What does it want? And you're right. It falls under the catch-all of they. So I agree with you. I think it is a psychological thing where almost not knowing is way worse than knowing.
Yeah, interesting.
But it's our brain's way of making it a catch-all, I think.
Right. Well, Brandy, yeah, give the protection thing a try and see if that helps. Because again, it sounds like it may not be a specific thing.
Right.
Or it might be rather, but whatever it is using that sort of non-specific term to scare you.
Yeah.
I hope the nightmares clear up. That is the shits.
That's awful.
Next up is Lauren. Lauren sent us an amazing jingle for the Ghost Line, which you'll hear a little later in the show.
Yeah.
And she had a question for us as well. She asked, what do you guys think of dreams? Do you think it's possible to have a paranormal experience through one? If so, I have a story to share with you. If not, then I'll keep my rainbow coat and shitty writing to myself. Ian should get the coat joke. It's a reference to a Bible story.
Joseph in the coat of many colors was the very first documented dream interpreter.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
It made him prime minister in Egypt.
You're not just having me on. This is a thing.
No. He was taken prisoner, and he interpreted a dream for the jailer and said, "Well, this is what that means. What you're saying." And to the jailer's great surprise, it came true. And a little while later, the king was saying, "I've had these dreams, and I don't know what they mean." And the jailer's like, "Oh, wait, I know someone." And he brought him in, and he interpreted the dreams that there was going to be a famine, and you need to have preparations for 7 years. And if you do that, everything will be fine. And sure enough, it kicked in. And so they made Joseph the prime minister.
Wow. Okay. So I should get you a coat of many colors is what you're saying. So, Lauren, I do think it's possible. I mean, to what extent? Who knows? I know some people believe that you go places when you dream. Not all the time. You know, some dreams I think are just manifestations of internal fears and kind of your brain hashing out things it's worried about or things it wants. But I do think it's possible for there to be otherworldly experiences as well. I mean, the fact that I had all those dreams that we talked about in bonus episode 3, or the fact I had a dream about the shooting in Los Angeles several years before I ever went to Los Angeles and was present at the scene of a shooting.
Yeah.
You know, so it's in very, specific circumstances too, not just, bad things happened here, but, like down to the placement of the officers and the freeway. And so, yeah, I do think it's possible. Absolutely. And we'd love to hear your story.
Yeah. And I think the number of stories we've had where people are able to say goodbye to their loved ones, I think that there are occasions where the energy can use our own dreams to be in touch with us. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, I know when my maternal grandmother died, she used to babysit us.
Right.
She went home one day and she didn't come back.
Oh, wow.
And I found out the next day, like later after that afternoon, that she'd eventually died of a heart attack earlier that morning.
Right.
And it was really hard. She could be a difficult lady, but I loved her very much. And
sure.
So it was really tough. And for months after she died, I would have these dreams where I'd be downstairs in the basement doing my thing because, I was a teenager playing video games or whatever. And I'd hear her voice upstairs. And so I would run upstairs, but she was always gone by the time I got there.
Weird, eh?
And then finally, months and months after she died, I ran up there and she was there. And she gave me a hug and she said goodbye. And I never had that dream again.
Interesting, eh?
Yeah.
That closure, that kind of resolution.
That's it, yeah. So yeah, please do send your story, Lauren. And thank you for the jingle.
Kay reached out through Instagram to say, "I'm truly very thankful for you both and your podcast. My husband just had a stroke and I need something to occupy my time. Keep up the great work and thank you for your kindness and compassion during this extraordinary journey that we call life." Oh, I'm so sorry, Kay. I hope he's recovering swiftly and thoroughly.
Absolutely. We wish you both the best. Next up is Amalyn. I hope I'm saying that right, Amalyn. If I'm not, you can send me an email and tell me to go to hell. She says, "This is so out of the blue, but I've been binging your podcast for a little while now. I'm literally addicted. It's a problem. Hey, not for us. I wanted to comment on the audio anomaly in the episode on Centralia. It sounds to me like it's a woman and she's saying yes, like she's affirming what Bren was recounting about his past life-like dreams he'd been having. Perhaps a spirit guide backing him up? I love you guys and the way you bounce off each other. Love me, a real big fan, all the way in South Africa. Well, that's pretty cool. South Africa.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's very possible, Amelin. Absolutely. I mean, I know we've got another email a little bit later about spirit guides, and I don't know much about the subject, so I can't really weigh in one way or the other.
I've been told I have one.
Oh, really?
By two different people who don't know each other, yeah.
Yeah, I remember you saying that, but I don't remember the specifics. Do you know anything more about it?
My great-grandmother, who was the wise woman for the village.
Right, okay.
Because I'm adopted, so it was my biological great-grandmother. And she had told my mother, my gifts won't go to any of you. It will go to one in the next generation. And I am the firstborn of that generation.
I am the firstborn.
I am, yeah. And when my mother met me and we were talking about things, she said, "Oh, you're the one who got it." So she was not shocked. And then, yeah, a priest friend of mine who doesn't believe in ghosts. We were driving to a conference and he said, "Yeah, there's an old woman in the back of the car and she's so proud of you." And I looked at him like, "What?" He goes, "I don't know what to tell you, man. I can see her." And I'm like, "Okay."
Wow.
Yeah, so I've had someone else tell me that as well. So hey, I'll take it.
Absolutely. There you go, Amelin. So yeah, absolutely, very, very possible. Thanks for writing.
This message comes from Big John Stud SA.
Yeah, sadly, this is not the real Big John Stud. Although an email from him would be pretty sweet, as he died in 1995.
This occurs in the 4720 mark. I know what I think I hear, so I won't say it, but see if y'all can hear it as well.
This is the clip John is talking about.
And we're in the middle of the road at this point, so I slammed on the brakes to slow down. As I passed where they should have been on the right side of the road, there was nothing. No one. Did they walk off the hill and down into the pasture?
And so, to me, it sounds like someone is in the room with you. There sounds like movement, and maybe a second breath.
Oh, okay.
But because I don't know at what point, I know your partner may have been in the room briefly, or
people wander in and out. That's so annoying.
Yeah, there you go.
I just locked the door now.
No, that's wise. That works.
Yeah.
So, John, I don't know if that's really your name. I kind of hope it is. John Stud, especially. But yeah, it's very
the living.
Yeah, it's the living. Yeah, it's the ambulatory living, we think.
Sad.
It's always a bummer when it turns out to be the living. But thanks for sending it in, and we appreciate you guys listening. We know you guys listen closely, so we always appreciate when you point stuff out to us, because you never know what we miss.
Exactly.
This next email comes from Krisha. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Hey, dudes. Hey, more emails should start that way. It's like I like being called dude or brother.
Yeah, it's because you're into wrestling and the Ninja Turtles.
Cowabunga. Listening to episode 94 tonight, and I keep having to rewind and re-listen because I keep hearing random sounds, static bursts, partial voices, clicks, and the like, behind y'all. Some sounds are still there, but not all. Pause the podcast to type this, and I'm still hearing the sounds.
So it's not us.
Well, thank God for that, because I would be mortified if my production had gone that badly. A number of years ago, I picked up a noise-making entity. Some voices, violin music at night, taps on walls, nothing big. I moved here a year and a half ago, and everyone thought the entity had left because I no longer heard those sounds. Until tonight, when everyone else is gone. This hasn't happened any other time the housemates are all out for the night, even when I'm listening to spooky stories. Thank you both for reminding us we're not alone and we're not crazy. On this day.
There you go. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Frankly, I'll take this day for me not being crazy. Tomorrow's another day.
There you go. Well, I'm sorry about that, and I hope it settles down. Hope it doesn't bug you too much.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if the reason they're not hearing it when the other folks are there is just that thing we talked about, where other people can kind of diffuse the energy. So you tend to hear more things, experience more things at night or when you're alone.
Yeah, so that's a good question.
Just tell your roomies they're not allowed to leave ever. That'll go over fine, I'm sure.
Our next one was from Mackenzie, who says, "You mentioned something that has been kind of stuck in my mind for days now. It talks about the engine room of the world and a group of people that help the world run, and how there is so much we don't know about. This has really stuck with me for days now, and tried to find anything about it on the internet with no luck. I figure you probably can't say too much about it, but if I were to try to research this, what should I search for?
I really wanted to touch on this because I realized the way I said it made it sound like a thing.
And it's not a thing, it's a you thing.
Yeah, it's a concept. It's kind of a way I refer to people who make the world go. So like paramedics, cops, firemen, anyone who deals with people, but the sort of all the unseen shit that keeps our world going. Right. Because we don't think about it.
No.
People who take away your trash. I mean, it's all kind of different levels of, I call it the engine room of the world, because it's, as far as we know, the machine just keeps going.
And if it didn't, we would be in serious trouble.
Absolutely. But there are so many layers to the world that we just, to everything, because we can't possibly engage with it all. It's in a way, it's like the paranormal. You can't possibly engage with everything that's happening because your fucking brain would explode.
Yep.
And so, I mean, you look at anything in front of you, and there's been such a massive process to get that thing to this place in space and time. Like, I've got this tablet in front of me. Well, that started life as a bunch of disparate elements. Yeah. That some poor fucker mined out of the ground, and then another poor fucker processed into a particular kind of plastic, and then the circuit boards and all that shit, right? Yeah. And I mean, you work sort of adjacent to law enforcement, and you know a lot of the shit that happens that we just don't hear about.
No.
I mean, I listen to the scanner at night sometimes when I'm driving, and all the stuff that happens on there, it just kind of gets dealt with in its way. And I'm not turning this into a referendum on law enforcement. I know that's a hot button issue, and we're just not going to touch it here. But even aside from that, there's just so many layers to what happens with the world that we just don't know about, or we're not aware of. So it's not a place, it's not a thing, it's not like a conspiracy thing. It's just this sort of metaphor for all the people who make the world go that we don't think about. And I really want to hammer home that it's like service personnel are a big part of that.
Oh, before I worked at Tim Hortons in high school, I never really thought of the people behind the counter as like people.
Of course. Yeah.
Not in a selfish way. I was never ignorant or rude to them. But it wasn't until I did that job that I went, oh. Yeah. And it made me even kinder, to be honest with you, because I know what it's like to be on the other side.
Oh, 1,000%.
Yeah, I think everyone should have to work a service-oriented job for at least 6 months. I think if everyone did that, we would have a kinder, gentler world.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. I know a lot of people get these hard-ons for mandatory military service, but I think mandatory service it should be required, because we have this grotesque culture of the customer is always right, which I think has done more to fuck up our relationships with other people.
I agree.
Than almost anything else.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Oh man, no, yeah. Think about what happened with the shutdown.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it became really hard to avoid the fact that these people we pay the least amount of money are the ones who keep the machinery going.
Yeah, exactly.
Without people working in restaurants, working in shops, picking up trash, the world is just, it's at a standstill. I used to work with this kid at the video store, and everyone crapped on him because his dad was a garbage man.
Right.
He was like the head garbage man. And one day I told him, I said, dude, next time these people give you grief, ask them what happens when no one picks up their goddamn garbage.
Yeah.
So Mackenzie, that's what I was referring to. And just a shout out from both of us to all those essential workers out there, teachers, people working in shops, people picking up garbage, people making sure the water keeps going, the power keeps going. It's a big goddamn system, and it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways, that's my soapbox done for now. Next up is our patron Allison, Ian's arch nemesis. Allison says, so a few mornings ago, my husband told me that during the night, he'd felt what he thought was the cat climbing onto the end of our bed. We closed the cat in his own room at night. I love that he has his own room.
Of course.
So that was not possible. I was pretty sure I'd gone to the bathroom at some point, so I said it was probably me climbing back into bed. Cut to tonight when he is quarantined in the basement. I'm upstairs alone trying to sleep, and I feel a sensation very similar to a single, careful step by a cat on my foot. Probably the sheets settling, but it scared the shit out of me, and I had to get hubby to come upstairs and tuck me in. Now I'm emailing it to you because I can't sleep. I hope all is well.
That is actually the monkey of fortune coming to tell her to move.
Just get out of Edmonton.
Get out of Edmonton. That's what's happening here. And I really hope she pays attention and listens to what the spirit world is trying to tell her. Finish with your sad, sad life in Edmonton and go somewhere that has opportunity and a will to live, I think would be really great.
So if you want to become a patron, head on over to patreon.com/ghost story guys, and Ian will question your life choices too.
Maybe we can start a Kickstarter for Allison. Help her get out of Edmonton. I think, we do it for tornadoes and floods and things. I think this qualifies.
My name is Paul, and this is Between Y'all.
Our next one is from Vince. Vince says, first, I just wanted to say thank you for a great podcast. I discovered the show just before Turducken shut down the campus where I teach and scattered my students to the four corners of the globe. As a result of their leaving town, I ended up teaching an 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. class every single night. Ooh. After class, I like to go for a 4 to 5 mile walk. I live in a safe neighborhood on the edge of a safe little town and know most of the neighbors, so it wasn't really as creepy as you think.
I disagree.
Yeah, I disagree too. You guys have been along for most of the steps on a 20-pound weight loss and fitness journey. Oh, congratulations.
Fuck yeah, good for you.
Yeah. At the moment, I'm working through the back catalog in reverse order, which may be strange, but fun. It's funny. A lot of people do that. They go backwards, which, okay, good on you.
So they start the newest one and go back?
Yeah, which I would be baffled by because I know we do talk about, like it'd be like reading a book backwards to me.
See, I do the same thing when I listen to a show. I start at the newest and I go back. To me, it seems crazy to do the opposite way.
Oh, wow. But we make so many referrals to past episodes. You'd be like, what? I don't understand. Anyway.
That's an excellent point. Yeah. And yet, in spite of all this sense you're making, I still do it that way.
The podcast is just the right length for the nightly walk. Excellent. And besides, who doesn't like listening to ghost stories in the night near the woods, surrounded by coyotes and owls? Oh, that would be me. I would not care for that. But,
2 votes.
I'm proud of you, Vince, for being way manlier. So good job.
I do kind of say you can go to hell for walking 4 to 5 miles in the amount of time it takes to listen to a show, because I do not walk that fast. That seems ridiculous to me. Go to hell, Vince. Next up is Megan, and Megan says, "Hi, Brennan and Ian. I just re-listened to episode 8. Oh God, 8. And you were talking about a place called Battle Creek, and that made me wonder, would you ever be interested in doing an episode on American Civil War ghost stories, either from listeners, the internet, or a combo of both? I'm a really big American Civil War history nerd, and it'd really be my favorite episode of your show if you could." And yeah, absolutely. We talked about this last year. I know Anthony was really into that. Mm-hmm. But once Turducken hit, as you've probably noticed, if you've been listening, we've been doing a lot of listener story episodes, mm-hmm. and that's just because it got hard for me to write, to take kind of stories from online and kind of turn them into the house style. Mm-hmm. So we kind of put the brakes on a lot of the original episodes for now. We're just kind of doing listener stories, and also we get so many of them.
We do. It's you almost need to do them to keep up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But all that said, we would love to do. We'd love to do an episode on Civil War ghost stories, and I know we've had some stories. We had one from Samantha from Gettysburg last episode, mm-hmm. and I think there might even have been another one from near Gettysburg. But yeah, and anyways, point being, we're very interested in that. And if you do have stories, or if you know of a resource for stories, I would say we're into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know we considered doing a book. There was a book we were sent a pre-release copy of that had to do with Civil War ghosts, and I vetoed it immediately because the preface basically included that whole lost cause of the Confederacy nonsense.
Oh no.
Yeah, and I'm not into it. That's revisionist history bullshit, and I'm not into it. But as a history nerd, you will not be that person. So yeah, absolutely. If you have stories, please send them.
Our next one's from Bob Vasquez, who, you may know if you've looked at our online store. He's sent us a lot of prints for use. Hey guys, I noticed that the last few podcasts featured stalker type ghosts. To me, it feels more like the Filipino gabe, roughly translated to guide. They guide and guard you through the spirit world, but it's not that simple. Guides come in many forms, from the typical ghosts to elementals and the mighty Encanto or Fae. They have a hierarchy. A common encounter would be with a prince, as he has his sole rights to venture from their kingdom to ours. Then there are the dark ones, which aren't necessarily evil. Also about the old Latin belief, Spanish ancestry for me and I think Italian for Brennan, that a fae is born as a twin to a human, making it close to a spirit guide. But the chances of it happening is rare, and most of the time the second fetus dies abruptly in utero. The belief was that the one born would then be eventually claimed by the fae, so the surviving baby is not human, but the fae taking the form of the child, unbeknownst to itself. The fae child gets raised as a normal child with telltale signs of abilities to connect with the spirit world.
So, Bob, you blew my mind with this, and I'm going to tell you why. My maternal grandmother, so my mother's mother, they are very Italian. I mean, not in that kind of showy New Jersey way, but my great-grandparents were from Sicily.
Right.
So, my grandma's parents were directly from Sicily, and she had an identical twin who died in utero.
Oh, wow.
And her entire life, my grandmother's family treated her like shit. And we never knew why.
Really?
We never knew why. My mother always told me grandma was always the black sheep of the family, and she was a sweet woman. I mean, life made her hard, but when she was younger, when she was raising her kids, she raised 6 kids on her own because my scumbag grandfather was a drunk. He was never around. And when he was around, he was a bad man. So she worked hard, but the family always treated her badly. And my mother said to me, I don't know why. I don't know why, because she divorced him.
Right.
The scumbag. And my mother thought maybe it was because of the divorce, but they were shitty to her before that. And I have another aunt great aunt, because it's my grandmother's sister, but she divorced her husband and no one cared. So this may have something to do with it, because they were old school Italians. Again, they were first generation. They came from Sicily.
Interesting.
So they may have believed that.
That is really interesting. There you go.
That she was not theirs technically.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bob, you may have shined some light onto an old family mystery there. I'm gonna actually let my mother know this. So thank you.
That's neat.
Talk about random, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Next up is Paul. Paul says, first, I suppose I would like to say that I have listened to a lot of different kinds of podcasts, similar to this over the years, and I've always had that little bit of a nudge towards writing, but you guys are the first ones that I really feel motivated enough to sit down and write. I think part of it is that you genuinely seem to have an interest in what your listeners have to say, without judgment, beyond the occasional quip at an obtuse father's expense. Yeah, we have our moments. And that you convey a sense of openness that I really appreciate. Your podcast is like sitting down and chatting, albeit one-sided, with old friends. For that, thank you. Well, thank you, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think it is worth mentioning that your views on mental health and one's ability to listen and pay attention to one's instincts is an excellent message. I'm actually a family therapist out on the East Coast in the US, and that is one of the points I stress thoroughly with my clients.
Nice.
To really listen to one's instincts.
Good.
Even if you have to ignore some social niceties to do so. If you have an interest in this topic, The Gift of Fear is an excellent read on the subject, and one that I suggest to many of my clients.
Very cool.
Yeah, I've actually read Gift of Fear, Paul, and I agree. It's a brilliant book. And to be honest, it taught me a lot about gender relations. You know, because I read it when I was 2000, so I was 27 when I read it.
Right.
And it really explained a lot to me about how other people, especially women, see the world.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
In terms of like the vulnerability that it just, because I move through the world. I mean, I'm very aware of danger. I'm, like the world's a dangerous place. I think that, people who flout their own personal safety and think that proves something are morons. But I never understood the innate vulnerability that people who are not exactly my size and gender experience when moving through the world. It just never occurred to me. And I read The Gift of Fear, and it was really eye-opening. And since then, I've been lucky enough to make friends with people who experience the world in a very different way. And they have been kind enough to share their experience of the world with me. And it's been really eye-opening. So, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think I told you when I saw that list about, they did a list a couple years ago now. What would men do if they were woke up and there were no women in the world? And it was essentially drink beer at every meal, eat burgers and not wear pants. That was
it's like Home Alone.
Yeah, and it was pretty much the entire list. The woman list made me so sad, mostly because it shocked me. Like, I'd go to a movie alone. I'd go for a walk at night. I'd eat dinner on my own with no book or anything. I'd go to the bar on my own. And I was reading it just going, wait, what?
Yeah.
Why can't they do? Oh,
yeah.
Men.
Because even if you're not in danger in a situation, you're still run a good chance of being fucking annoyed.
It really did 100% change my views on how more challenging it is for women to move through the world than just being, a dude.
We've had comments, and we've talked about this before, people kind of poo-pooing this, but I don't care what you think. But
because it's our show and not yours.
That's it. And I think it's important to say this stuff because we're dudes. And frankly, I think people listen.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who, we would go for drives at night. And for the longest time, I would drop her off at the foot of her street because she lived up a dead end street.
Right.
So she had to walk half a block to her house.
Right.
And then one night, she was almost assaulted after I dropped her off.
No.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, whatever variable in this dude's head that he needed to really commit didn't happen. But this person has a very well-honed sense of danger. Mm-hmm. And she told me she was really frightened. And that's one of maybe 4 times in her life or in our friendship that she's told me this.
Wow.
And just think about that. That's half a friggin' block.
Yeah.
Again, on a dead-end street in a relatively safe city. From that point on, I started dropping her right at her door.
That's crazy.
But yeah, so, and this is just one of 1,000 things that I think most people don't think about, especially, I say dudes, but I think anyone who is kind of moves through the world without being harassed, because I mean, some people I think have this sort of ingrained sense of, don't mess with me that other people seem to pick up on, but not everyone has that. And I think when you have that, you tend to view the world from that perspective alone.
Well, you almost need to learn to do that. Like I remember teaching my son to do that because he was going to be riding the bus by himself in grade 5.
Of course.
And I said, you need to put on a face that says, don't come near me. I may go crazy and I may punch you in the mouth. Yep. And I said, wear sunglasses, have earphones in, and don't ever look anybody in the eye. Just look pissed off.
Yeah.
And it worked.
That's it.
Because he would have to walk then from the bus stop 3 blocks to his school through downtown. And at grade 5, like I wasn't thrilled about that. But it was something that I had to think about. How do I make my child less vulnerable, essentially?
And I know I joke a lot about not wanting ever to have kids, but that's one of the reasons I'm glad I don't. Is because that must be such a minefield to navigate.
Well, someone put it really well. They said, when you have a child, it's like taking a piece of your heart and letting it run around on the outside of your body.
Oh, it terrifies me, man.
Right. And I remember reading that going, that pretty much sums it up.
Oh.
And there's nothing you can do. I remember the first big trip he went on, he went to Brazil with school.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, if something happens, there is nothing I can do about it.
Oh man. Yeah.
And that was a first because even if he was just, an hour away, I could drive there. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Of course.
But all of a sudden, no. You can't do anything. But I'm so glad because he went on other school trips and they went to Argentina. He went to China. He went to Vietnam. And every time he came back, he grew, right? And he had this whole different perspective on the world, which you can't get any other way. So I'm really glad he did that. Yeah.
A friend of mine, a long time ago, he listens to the show, so he'll probably remember this. But he was a big guy, and he was out for a walk in Revelstoke one night. So this is Revelstoke in the 90s. So let's face it, this is 8,000 people, 7,000 people,
sure.
Small town. This kid smoked him in the face with a skateboard.
Oh no.
For no reason.
Yikes.
No reason whatsoever. Just took exception to his face and decided he wanted to rearrange it.
Wow.
And yeah, right? And so you never know the minute, you never know the hour.
No.
And fear is a valuable thing.
It is indeed.
It's a tool. Like anything else, fear is a tool. You can't let it run your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I could talk about this for ages, but we'll move on. Thank you so much, Paul.
Scottish Girl wrote in to say, just wanted to drop you an email to say how much I enjoy your podcast. I've been working my way through the episodes, and I'm only a handful of episodes away from being up to date. What will I do when I have to wait for the next episode?
Go to patreon.com/ghostery.
While I have never had a strong paranormal experience, I'm certainly open to the idea. Over the past year or so, I keep seeing movement out of the corner of my eye. I can never see what it is that catches my eye, and I never feel scared in any way. It's more like there's things I just can't quite see. I have a dog who I trust to alert me if anyone's around me that shouldn't be, but even she seems to be interested when I think I see something But again, she seems curious more than scared. I lost my dad a while back, and I do wonder if he's checking in on me. He was a big dog lover and would definitely seem like a non-threat to my dog. I live in a 100-year-old house, not unusual in Scotland, and I'm sure there have been many lives lived in my wee house, but I always feel safe here. Regardless, I remain open-minded, and if it is my dad checking on me, I just hope he's proud. Sending you both lots of love and good vibes, Scottish girl. Aw, that's amazing.
It is. Thank you so much.
And he is proud of you, just so you know.
Next up is our patron, Carol. And Carol says, "Oh my God, I'm up and unable to sleep, so I threw on an old episode, just picking one out of the blue. Need I say which? Yes, the famous episode 26. I'm just listening, relaxing, and I forgot that you paid for pronunciation. I damn near jumped out of my skin when the voice came out of my earbuds. Now I'm definitely not going to sleep anytime soon since my heart is racing."
I'm so sorry.
Sorry about that, Carol. I should put like a disclaimer on that or something.
A trigger warning.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, if anyone out there is into our back catalog or is listening through our back catalog, I am slowly bringing all those episodes up to the same audio level that the new ones are.
Oh, nice. So they're going to be nice and even?
Yes, exactly. Or as even as we can get them, yeah. I've done, I want to say 6 or 8 so far.
Oh.
Yeah, not a ton. But
no, but that's still some work.
Yeah, I did episodes 1, 2, and 3, I believe. I did that episode, actually, coincidentally enough, 26. I did, I want to say like 26 to 31, maybe? Yeah, so it's eventually they'll all be at a listenable volume. I know we didn't know what the hell we were doing back then.
No, really didn't.
So they will be more listenable now, I promise.
Our patron Nick sent a message in, currently listening to episode 94 on the night shift, so you'll have to forgive any waning thought patterns. Been thinking about the comments in this episode and the others concerning the forest fires, about how Brennan mentioned feeling like something is stretching its legs, and other listeners have felt similar. I spent a few fire seasons living in the BC interior, and have experienced that ominous omnipresence of days upon days of haze under a red sun. The best way I could compare it is if you've ever been alone in nature during a soft, heavy snow, that uneasy subconscious feeling of isolation and eerie silence. I wonder if the fires are doing something similar, but pulling different strings. Smoke has long since been a precursor to danger. Human and animal alike have long shared this instinct. And while we have the advantages of communication and a window to close, we haven't forgotten the unease. That's an excellent point, actually. It's been noted for a while now the spikes in paranormal activity when they happen near water or high voltage power lines. So I wonder, how much fire does it take to unsettle a region? These entities, by the accounts I've been hearing through you guys, don't seem to really have any malice or intent, just that they're stirring up. Maybe they're feeling those uneasy emotions from a fire they can't see, that subconscious knowledge that something is wrong. Depending on how tangible their reality is with ours, everything must feel unnerving. The life has dimmed from our cities and towns due to turducken, and suddenly a great mass of smoke drifts in on the wind to linger for weeks. I'm sure the energies of our world can feel it just as we can watch it happen. Maybe some are confused by it. Maybe some are scared by it. And maybe some are more than happy to take advantage of it. Didn't mean to talk your ear off, just an idle thought from the wee hours of the morning. I think that's a good point about weird global events or regional events having an impact on the energy. And I'm sure if people are feeling uneasy, and I appreciate what he said about that, I think instinctually we do shy away from things like smoke, even though our conscious brain tells us we're fine. That, yeah, there's going to be a shift in energy. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, no, I think you make a great point, Nick. I mean, it's sort of kind of a novel thought, this idea that we're haunting them with our nonsense.
Right?
One last thought, when I was listening to you read that, I was thinking about the book, I think it's The Untold History of the United States by Oliver Stone.
Oh, okay.
And there's a documentary on Netflix that they made out of it, or maybe it was made in tandem, I don't know. But anyways, I read the book, I haven't seen the doc yet. But he's talking about the tail gunner in the plane. Was it the Enola Gay that dropped the first atomic bomb?
Oh, yeah.
And there's an interview with this guy where he describes watching that explosion, and he said that it was shockingly colorful. He said the colors were unlike anything he'd ever seen, colors he couldn't even name.
Wow. And
it got me thinking about how a lot of these paranormal sort of visitations in the decades that followed, especially, so say alien stuff, revolved around the use of atomic weapons and fear of atomic weapons. And I always wondered if it's possible that the elemental nature of atomic weapons destroys things on planes more than our own.
Interesting.
You know, it's not just a destruction, it's an unmaking.
Yeah, I get it.
And so I just, kind of a random thought. But anyways, that's a cheery note to go out on.
Yeah, you're a random dude.
I'm a random happy guy, Ian. That's what's sad. I'm actually in a pretty good mood. So this is what happens. You get nuclear bomb stories, and I swear more when I'm happy. That's going to do it for our mailbag this time around. Thank you to everyone who wrote in. And, of course, our apologies to the people whose emails we didn't get to. We get a ton of correspondence, and we love reading it. We love getting it. And we want to get as much as we can into these mini shows. So thank you to everyone who reached out. If you want to reach out, we're at ghoststoryguys@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter at twitter.com/ghoststoryguys, Facebook at facebook.com/ghoststoryguys, and Instagram at instagram.com/theghoststoryguys. And I want to give a shout out to our listener, Huba. I think I'm pronouncing your name right, who bought a couple of our books from the Big Cartel store, which you can buy at ghoststoryguys.bigcartel.com, and just sent us a really, really wonderful message via Instagram. And again, it was one of those things where it was so kind. I didn't want to read it on the show because it was too kind.
Because you tear up.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not good at receiving compliments. I love them. I'm just not good at receiving them.
I just wanted to do a shout out too to our very solid listeners, almost from the beginning, Lucas and Tanya. They just had a baby boy.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. So that was pretty awesome. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure young Brennan will grow up to be strong and proud.
That's not his name.
I'm very disappointed.
Yeah. Well, I talked them out of it.
I knew it. It's Ian now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bullshit.
It's not Ian.
Disappointing twice now.
Yeah, I know.
Of course, if you want to get in touch, there's all the ways I mentioned. But if you don't feel like typing, there's always the ghost line.
If you don't like talking, then you're just like me. But you can text the ghost line with your ghost stories. So text Brennan Ian with your pictures and tales at 925-553-4789.
Thanks to Lauren Hutchison for our brand new Ghost Line jingle. Again, you can call us at 1-888-588-6920, or you can text us at 925-553-4789. This time around, we have a lot of Ghost Line calls. We play these calls every 2 weeks here on the mini show. If you want to leave a message, but you would prefer to be left anonymous, or rather to be made anonymous, let us know. We can cut off your name if you mention your name, and we can subtly alter your voice as well if you'd like. So just let us know in the message, and we will do that. Our first call tonight is from Gino.
Hi, my name is Gino. I'm from Baltimore County, Maryland, and I'll just take you back to the beginning, from the ages of 3 to 6. I used to be visited by nightly visitors. They terrified me when I was 3 years old. In fact, I yelled for my mother to come in, which finally she did under protest. She flipped on the light. They disappeared. She said, "You're having a bad dream. Go back to sleep," even though I was sitting upright in bed. So I realized that wasn't going to work. Sure enough, she turned the light off. I laid back down, and they were back. I could hear them. They were all like talking amongst themselves, and they seemed delighted that I could see and hear them. They were in very old clothing, period costumes, I would say. But the two that stood out to me the most was a Native American man in headdress and buckskin, and an African American woman in a pale cotton thin dress with her hair pulled back straight into a bun. They stood out to me the most because, myself being Caucasian, I had never seen anyone that looked like that. Anyway, to make this story shorter, they came and visited nearly nightly. And finally, at the age of 6, I was into a deep sleep, and sure enough, there they were again. I woke up, looked over at all of them, and said, "Oh, you woke me up." Rolled over and went back to sleep. They never came back to visit me at night. At least they didn't materialize. The other thing that I noticed with them is that I could see kind of through them, but they were pretty solid. So it didn't strike me when I was a little kid. I thought, this is just normal. These people were coming to visit me. Maybe they're guardian angels, I thought later on. But later on, I came to realize they were spirits. Interesting enough, I ended up working in the paranormal field for a 900 line that did astrological tarot and psychic readings. In fact, I did an astrological reading in one of their infomercials under another name. But in that group of psychics that I worked with at the time, one of them did a reading on me, and she said, "You always have 13 spirits around you." Well, that's my first story. I will give you part 2 when I call back in a little bit because I don't want to be cut off. That one's a little more interesting. Thank you.
This next caller, unfortunately, there is a little bit of distortion on the line, and so we had to cut out the bit of the call with her name, but we were able to salvage the rest of the call. It's a very, very short one.
Hi, Brennan. Hi, Ian. I don't have a story. I just wanted to thank you for everything you were doing. Today has been some sort of a day, and it was helpful having you guys on my ride home. Thanks for everything you do. Bye.
Caller, thank you so, so much. I'm glad we can make a difference in your day.
Hi, this is Gino from Baltimore County, Maryland. This is story number 2. A couple blocks away from that childhood home that I grew up in, there were these apartments surrounded by a lake that had been filled in the 70s. There were also cross burnings up there in the late 60s and early 70s when they had just finished building them and people started moving in. I moved in, and I was alone for the first probably 5-6 months, but I wanted to get a roommate. Anyway, I would hear voices, whistling, something calling my name, even though I lived alone. It wasn't something from outside. It wasn't something from another apartment. Eventually, I did move in 2 roommates. One guy was, unfortunately, surfing my couch, and he didn't have any money to pay rent, as it turned out, down the road. The other was in her own bedroom next to mine. This apartment, by the way, the rent was cheap, but the air conditioning and the heat wasn't very good. One night, a box fan was sitting on the floor blowing on the bed, and something stirred me, and I noticed that the fan was going from high to medium to low, to medium to high, to medium to low, etc. I looked to the 3 mirrors that were alongside the wall of the bed, and there was an energy ball and shimmering lights like electricity going in and out of the 3 mirrors. I didn't know what to make of this, but I sat up, stared in the direction of the fan, and said, "Go back from whence you came. You were not welcome here." Immediately, the fan went back to high, the energy ball disappeared into the mirror, and my bedroom door went slam. Well, this apparently stirred my 2 roommates, who came down the hall saying, "Is everything all right?" And I said, "Well, I guess the breeze must have caught the door and slammed it shut," even though the window was closed because the air conditioning was on. Years later, I moved to Alexandria, and I decided to watch the Baltimore news because we used antennas back in those days. Yes, I'm old. And there was a news broadcast that said, tragedy in the town that this was in. And they showed the outside of the building because the rental office was there. I lived below the rental office. Details at 11. Well, to make a long story short, a man had shot his 2 children, his wife, and then himself. And the neighbor that he talked to, who was there when I lived there, so he's been there for like 4 years by this point, said that, yeah, he complained about hearing voices. I guess he was crazy or something.
Gino, thank you so much for the stories. As for this one, I don't like to speculate when real-life tragedy is involved, but we've definitely talked on the show about how certain locations can influence negative behavior, and it wouldn't surprise me if that's what happened here. I think it's pretty safe to say we're glad you left when you did. As I mentioned, Gino called in with several stories, and we're really looking forward to sharing those with you on future installments. Thank you, Gino.
Hi, Bren and Ian. This is Jen from New Jersey. I've been a patron of yours for a couple months now. I've listened to every single episode, and I'm just finally catching up on all of the cabin fever. And I just listened to the most recent one where you discuss Class Action Park, and as someone who grew up in Vernon, New Jersey during the 90s, have many stories about that specific place. But hearing you guys talk about it would be like, my hometown would be like me getting interviewed by a podcast or something and hearing me talk about Revelstoke. I don't know. I'm a big fan, and so that hearing you guys talk about my hometown was pretty crazy. I did not work there. Many of my cousins, my friends all work there. It was one of the largest employers of the time of my high school. They chose the lifeguards based on how they looked in a bathing suit, not on whether or not they could save people's lives. So I was not allowed to work there. I worked at the deli down on the main town green, right next to where the medevac helicopter had to come in, because we're in a big, deep valley as well, and the medevac helicopter could only land on certain places. And I worked at the deli, where after dropping someone mortally wounded off to be flown out of our town to a trauma center, the ambulance guys would come back and get coffee and a bagel. It was exactly as frightening as everybody says, if not more so, because I knew the stoners and the ditzes that they were hiring as lifeguards, and my parents refused to even let me attend. I went 3 times, snuck in, and they were some of the scariest times of my life. I took my little brother, too, because I'm just that kind of an awful big sister. But I just wanted you to know that it was really cool to hear you talk about it. Good luck. God bless. Take care. Safe from Turducken. And thanks for giving us the shout out from Vernon, New Jersey.
Jen, thanks for calling. That is really cool. I'm glad you survived Action Park. And for those of you who are not patrons or you haven't heard that particular Cabin Fever episode, check out the documentary Class Action Park. It's pretty wild.
Hi, guys. It's Ruth Dempsey from Rochester, New York, and I just have a question. Can we get a Steve the Cheese Thief magnet? Steve the Cheese Demon magnet. Oh, I need more coffee. Bye.
Hey, Ruth, thanks for the suggestion. I think you may be able to get a Steve magnet in the TeePublic store. If you have a look, just head to our website at ghoststoryguys.com, follow the links, and you should be able to get a Steve the Cheese Demon die-cut magnet there. We were talking about having some magnets made up, but I know the problem we ran into is that it costs quite a bit to get high-quality magnets made up because you have to buy quite a few. And the test run that we did from a supplier a little ways back, we weren't very happy with quality. So I think for the time being, probably the best place would be the TeePublic store. But if that changes, we'll also mention something here about adding it to the Big Cartel store. If there are any other Cheese Demon fans out there, we've got the die-cut sticker on sale in our Big Cartel store right now. They're going for $2 Canadian. And you can find that, along with signed copies of our books and a whole bunch of other stuff, at ghoststoryguys.bigcartel.com. Thank you to everyone who called and texted in on the Ghost Line. We really do love hearing from you. And if you've got a story to share or just something you want to say, you can always call us at 1-888-588-6920. The voicemails time out after 3 minutes, but if your story needs more time than that, feel free to call back and leave more of a message, and call back as many times as you need to. As Lauren said, if you don't feel like talking but you want to text, you can get a hold of us at 925-553-4789. The 1-800 number is toll-free within North America. The texting number is an American number, so if you're outside of America, there may be a charge for international texting depending on your carrier. That's going to do it for the Ghost Line. Thanks again to everyone who called in and to everyone who's going to call. We can't wait to hear what you've got to say. Our theme song, Radio Into the Darkness We Go, the Surfing Dead mix, was composed by Peter of Pizzanta Music and performed by Ferre. All other music and sound effects on this show come courtesy of Epidemic Sound. If you're looking for pod-safe music or sound effects for your next project, head on over to epidemicsound.com to check them out. Ian has an interview coming up on CKNW out of Vancouver. When that finally airs, we will post it to our Facebook page. I imagine it will be available online. And we've added Kevin from We Need to Talk About Ghosts to our upcoming live show at the end of the month. Yes, I'm very excited. That live show is going to be available to all our patrons from the $1 level up. That's coming up on October 24th from noon to 1 p.m. We may go a little bit longer. And you can access that by becoming a patron at patreon.com/ghoststoryguys. I guess that's going to do it. We'll be back next week with episode 96. And until then,
into the darkness we go.